Hi, my name is Sophia and I'm 30 years old. I've worked hard to build a life I'm proud of. After years of late nights, early mornings, and countless sacrifices, I finally landed a stable job in finance at a well-known company. It wasn't easy, but the salary was good and I was able to achieve something I'd dreamed of for years, buying my own apartment. It wasn't a luxury penthouse or anything extravagant, but it was mine, paid for with my own money. And to me, that made it perfect. I remember the day so clearly. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I was enjoying a rare moment of peace when my younger sister, Emily, showed up at my door unannounced. Emily is 25, and unlike me, she's always been, let's just say, a little more relaxed about life. She still lived with our parents, and while they supported her financially, she never seemed in a rush to figure out her own path. She'd always say, "I'm just taking my time to find myself." But that day, something was different. As soon as I let her in, I noticed the way her eyes darted around my apartment, taking in every detail. She wandered from room to room, touching things, examining everything like she was seeing it for the first time, even though she'd been here plenty of times before. "Your place is so nice, Soph," she said, running her hand along the kitchen counter. "You're so lucky." I couldn't help but laugh. "Lucky? Emily, I worked my butt off for this place. You know that." She turned to face me, and to my surprise, her eyes were welling up with tears. "I can't take it anymore," she blurted out. "Living with Mom and Dad is suffocating me. I need to get out." And just like that, my peaceful Saturday took a turn I never saw coming. Emily sat down on my couch, her hands fidgeting nervously. I could tell she was working up to something, and I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. "Sophia," she started, her voice trembling slightly, "I've been thinking a lot about my life lately. I'm 25, and I feel like I'm stuck. Living with Mom and Dad, it's holding me back. I need to break free and start living on my own." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when? Last time we talked, you seemed pretty happy letting Mom do your laundry and Dad pay your phone bill." "That's exactly the problem," she exclaimed, pulling out her phone. "I've been reading this book by Dr. Martinez about adult children and codependency. He says that if I don't cut the parental umbilical cord now, I'll be stuck forever. I'll just wither away." I tried not to roll my eyes. Emily quoting a self-help book was a new one. "Okay," I said cautiously. "So what are you asking me for?" She took a deep breath, and there it was, the real reason for her visit. "I need your help, Soph. I want to move out, but I need money for the first 3 months of rent, just enough to get started. I'll find a job right away, and then I'll be completely self-sufficient, just like you." The way she said, "just like you," tugged at something in me. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was guilt. I had always worried about Emily, about whether she'd ever grow up and take responsibility for her life. And now here she was, asking for my help to take that first step. How could I say no? "Okay," I heard myself say almost before I'd even thought it through. "I'll help you." The squeal she let out could probably have been heard 3 floors down. She threw her arms around me, nearly knocking me over. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the best sister ever, Soph. I promise you won't regret this." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But as I watched her practically skip out of my apartment that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might have just made a huge mistake. A week after our conversation, Emily burst into my apartment, waving her phone in the air like she'd just won the lottery. "Soph, I found the perfect places. You have to see these," she exclaimed, practically dragging me to the couch before I could even finish the coffee I was drinking. She started scrolling through listings on her phone, her excitement bubbling over. "Look at this one," she said, showing me a sleek, modern apartment in one of the most expensive complexes in the city. "It has a rooftop pool, a gym, and even a concierge. And the view, oh my God, the view is amazing." I glanced at the price tag and nearly choked. "Emily, this place is $2,800 a month. That's insane." "But it comes with parking," she argued, as if that somehow justified the cost. Before I could respond, she swiped to the next listing. Okay, fine, this one's a bit cheaper, only $2,500. And look at the marble countertops. I put my hand over her phone, stopping her mid-swipe. Emily, stop. These places are completely out of the question. You need something realistic. She frowned, clearly disappointed, but I wasn't about to let her guilt me into paying for a luxury apartment. I pulled out my laptop and showed her a listing I'd found earlier. Here, I said, pointing to the screen. This is more reasonable. It's a one-bedroom in a good neighborhood, comes furnished with basic appliances, and the rent is manageable. Emily wrinkled her nose as she looked at the photos. But it's so basic. It's clean, safe, and perfectly nice for a first apartment, I said firmly. In fact, it's nicer than my first place was. Plus, it's within walking distance of several businesses where you could apply for jobs. She slumped back on the couch, crossing her arms like a petulant child. I guess. Look, I said, trying to be patient. This is exactly the kind of place you need while you're getting established. Once you have a steady job and your own income, you can upgrade if you want. After what felt like an hour of convincing, she finally agreed to look at the apartment I'd suggested. The next day, we met with a realtor, a cheerful woman named Linda, who walked us through the place. It was exactly as advertised, modest but pleasant, with decent furniture and working appliances. Emily kept making faces when she thought I wasn't looking, but I ignored her. We'll take it, I told Linda, pulling out my checkbook. I wrote checks for both the security deposit and 3 months' rent, while Emily signed the lease agreement. As she scribbled her signature, I felt a mix of pride and anxiety. This was really happening. My little sister was finally taking her first steps toward independence. Over the next few weeks, I called Emily regularly to check on her job search. At first, she seemed enthusiastic, telling me about the resumes she was sending out and the interviews she was lining up. But as time went on, her answers became more and more evasive. Any luck with the job hunt? I asked during one of our calls. Don't worry about it, she said dismissively. I've got it under control. Before I could press her further, she hung up. I stared at my phone, a sinking feeling in my stomach. Something wasn't right. 3 months flew by faster than I expected. I hadn't heard much from Emily during that time, aside from the occasional text or call where she assured me everything was going great. I wanted to believe her, but something about her tone always felt off. Still, I told myself to trust her. She was an adult now, and this was her chance to prove she could handle responsibility. Then, one Friday evening, my phone rang. It was Emily. Hey, Soph, she chirped, her voice overly cheerful. So, I have a little favor to ask. I sighed, already bracing myself. What is it, Emily? Well, she began, dragging out the word. I'm kind of in a tight spot right now. My rent is due next week, and I was wondering if you could, help me out. Just this one time. I felt my stomach drop. Wait a second. What happened to the job you were supposed to get? You've had 3 months, Emily. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. It's complicated, she finally said. I've been looking, but nothing's worked out yet. You know how hard the job market is right now. I wasn't buying it. Emily, you promised me you'd find a job. That was the whole point of me helping you in the first place. I know, she said quickly, her voice taking on that whiny tone she always used when she wanted something. But I just need a little more time. Please, Soph, you're the only one who can help me. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something about the way she was talking didn't sit right with me. After we hung up, I decided to do a little digging. I opened Instagram and typed her name into the search bar. Her profile popped up immediately, and what I saw made my blood boil. There she was, my struggling sister, living it up like a social media influencer. Post after post showed her at fancy restaurants, rooftop parties, and even a weekend getaway at a luxury resort. In one photo, she was holding a glass of champagne, captioned, "Living my best life, Blessed independent woman. Independent woman? Are you kidding me? I scrolled further and it only got worse. There were pictures of her apartment, decked out with expensive decorations I knew she couldn't afford, and videos of her hosting parties with groups of people I'd never seen before. It was like she was living in a completely different reality, one funded by my hard-earned money. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to her apartment. When she opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, pushing past her into the living room. The place was a mess. Empty wine bottles, takeout containers, and clothes strewn everywhere. It looked more like a frat house than the apartment of someone who was supposedly trying to get her life together. "What's going on?" she asked, feigning innocence. I held up my phone, showing her one of her Instagram posts. "Care to explain this?" Her face turned red, but she quickly recovered, crossing her arms defensively. "What's the big deal? I'm allowed to have fun, aren't I?" "Son," I snapped. "Emily, you told me you were struggling to find a job. You begged me for money to help you get on your feet, and this is what you've been doing? Partying and pretending to be some kind of influencer?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Soph. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong." "Doing anything wrong?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You lied to me, Emily. You manipulated me into paying for your rent so you could live this ridiculous lifestyle. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for that money?" She shrugged, completely unfazed. "Relax. It's not like you can't afford it." That was the final straw. "You know what, Emily? I'm done. No more money, no more help. You're on your own." Her jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I said, heading for the door. "If you want to live like this, fine, but you're not doing it on my dime." As I walked out of her apartment, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. For the first time in months, I was finally standing up for myself. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought cutting Emily off would finally force her to take responsibility for her actions. But of course, I underestimated her ability to stir up drama. A few days later, I got a call from my mom. "Sophia," she started, her voice already laced with disapproval, "we need to talk about Emily." I sighed, already knowing where this was going. "What about her, Mom?" "She told us you refused to help her pay her rent," she said, her tone accusatory. "She's your sister, Sophia. How could you just abandon her like that?" "Abandon her?" I repeated, incredulous. "Mom, I've been supporting her for months. I paid for her apartment, her rent, everything, and what did she do? She partied, wasted my money, and lied to me. I'm not abandoning her, I'm holding her accountable." Mom didn't seem to care. "She's struggling, Sophia. She's your little sister. It's your job to help her." "No, Mom," I said firmly. "It's not my job to enable her. She's 25 years old. She needs to grow up and take responsibility for her own life." But Mom wasn't having it. "You don't understand how hard it is for her. She's been trying her best." "Trying her best," I snapped. "Have you seen her Instagram? She's not trying to find a job. She's trying to live like a celebrity, and she's using my money to do it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Mom said, "Well, maybe if you'd been more supportive, she wouldn't feel the need to act out like this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So this is my fault now? Are you serious?" Before she could respond, I heard my dad's voice in the background. "Sophia, we're having a family meeting this weekend. You need to be there." I wanted to say no, to tell them I was done with all of this, but a part of me still hoped they'd finally see my side. So, reluctantly, I agreed. That Saturday, I walked into my parents' house, already bracing myself for the worst. Emily was sitting on the couch, looking every bit the victim. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, and she clutched a tissue in her hand for dramatic effect. Mom and Dad sat across from her, their faces a mix of concern and disappointment, directed entirely at me. "Sophia," Dad started, "we're really disappointed in how you've handled this situation." I blinked, stunned. You're disappointed in me? Are you kidding? I'm the only one who's actually tried to help her. Help, Emily cut in, her voice trembling. You call abandoning me help? Do you know how scared I've been, wondering if I'll end up homeless? Homeless? I shot back. You're not homeless, Emily. You're irresponsible. You had 3 months to find a job, and instead you spent your time partying and pretending to be an influencer. Don't act like this is my fault. That's enough, Mom said sharply. Emily made some mistakes, but she's your sister. Family is supposed to stick together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Emily lies to me, manipulates me, and wastes my money, and I'm the bad guy because I won't keep funding her lifestyle? How does that make any sense? Because you're in a position to help her, Dad said. You have a good job, a nice apartment. You can afford to help her. That's not the point, I shouted, finally losing my patience. This isn't about what I can afford. It's about what's right. And what's right is for Emily to take responsibility for her own life. I'm not her ATM. Emily started crying again, and Mom immediately rushed to comfort her. It's okay, sweetie, she cooed. We'll figure something out. I stood up, shaking my head. You're not helping her. You're enabling her. And if you keep doing this, she's never going to change. As I walked out of the house, I heard Emily sobbing and my parents calling after me, but I didn't look back. I was done. Done with the guilt, the manipulation, and the constant pressure to fix problems that weren't mine to fix. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. After that family meeting, I decided to step back completely. I stopped answering Emily's calls, ignored her texts, and avoided any conversations with my parents about her. I knew they were upset with me, but I also knew I had done the right thing. Emily needed to face the consequences of her actions, and I wasn't going to be the one to shield her anymore. A few weeks later, I got a call from my mom. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of me. Sophia, she said, her voice heavy with worry. We need your help. Emily's in trouble. I sighed. What now? She's being evicted, Mom said, her voice breaking. She hasn't paid her rent in 2 months, and the landlord is threatening to take legal action. She's scared, Sophia. She doesn't know what to do. I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly pushed it aside. Mom, I told you this would happen. I warned you, she's not scared. She's just hoping someone will bail her out again. She's your sister, Mom pleaded. She's not perfect, but she's family. Please, Sophia, if you don't help her, she could end up on the street. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this. Emily needs to learn that her actions have consequences. If you and Dad want to help her, that's your choice, but I'm done. Mom started crying, and I felt a familiar wave of guilt wash over me, but I stood my ground. I love you, Mom, I said softly, but this isn't my responsibility anymore. A few days later, I found out that my parents had dipped into their retirement savings to pay off Emily's overdue rent. They even gave her extra money to get back on her feet. I wanted to scream. They were only making things worse, but I knew there was no point in arguing. They were too blinded by their desire to protect her to see the damage they were doing. It didn't take long for Emily to blow through the money. Within a month, she was back to her old habits, partying, shopping, and posting about her fabulous life on social media. But this time, things spiraled even further out of control. She started hosting wild parties in her apartment, and one of her neighbors reported her to the landlord. When the landlord came to inspect the property, he found that Emily had damaged the walls, stained the carpets, and even sold some of the furniture that came with the apartment. The landlord was furious and threatened to sue her for the damages. That's when my mom called me again, begging me to step in. Sophia, please, she said, her voice desperate. If the landlord sues her, she'll have a record. It could ruin her future. I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't help her. She needs to deal with this on her own. But she's your sister, Mom cried. How can you just stand by and let this happen? Because it's the only way she'll learn, I said firmly. If you keep bailing her out, she'll never change. She'll just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Mom didn't respond, and after a long silence, she hung up. I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because I hated seeing my family in turmoil, but relief because I knew I was finally setting the boundaries I should have set a long time ago. In the end, Emily was evicted from her apartment. She moved back in with my parents, who continued to enable her behavior. She still hasn't found a job, and as far as I know, she has no plans to. Every now and then, I'll see one of her Instagram posts pop up on my feed, another carefully curated snapshot of her perfect life. It's frustrating, but I've learned to let it go. Her choices are no longer my responsibility. It's been almost a year since I cut Emily off, and while things haven't been easy, I know I made the right decision. My relationship with my parents is still strained. They blame me for not stepping in to save Emily, and I've had to distance myself from them to protect my own peace of mind. It hurts, but I've come to realize that sometimes even family can be toxic. As for Emily, she's still living with my parents. She hasn't found a job, and from what I hear, she spends most of her time scrolling through social media or planning her next content shoot. She's still posting pictures of herself at fancy restaurants and pretending to live this glamorous life, but I know the truth. It's all a facade. I've stopped trying to fix her. I've stopped trying to make my parents see the damage they're doing by enabling her. It's not my job to save them from the consequences of their choices. I've learned that the only person I can control is myself. Looking back, I realized that helping Emily wasn't the mistake. It was letting her take advantage of me. I wanted so badly to believe in her potential that I ignored all the red flags. I thought I was being a good sister, but in reality, I was just enabling her bad behavior. The hardest part of this whole experience was learning to say no. It felt cruel at first, like I was abandoning her. But now I see that saying no was the most loving thing I could have done. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Family isn't about blind loyalty or endless sacrifice. It's about love, respect, and accountability. And sometimes, love means walking away.